Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to go over an article on seekingalpha.com talking about Zion Oil and Gas, ticker symbol ZNOG. So we won't always bring you just the positive. We're going to bring you the negatives as well, the good, the bads, and the uglies. Now, this is all opinionated, of course, but I wanted to share this article to kind of get everyone's thoughts on it as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about the author also. So it says, Zion Oil and Gas, still a dog, even on the OTC. So the summary discusses in November 2020. This author called Zion Oil and Gas stock a dog, and the opinion has not changed. There's money to be made from volatility in the shares, but that's all. The actual business itself is simply not going to be viable, in my opinion, of course, or his opinion, of course. And then it says, looking for more investment ideas like this one, get them exclusively at Bears and Resources. Which is, I guess, somewhere else where he writes. So we're going to go through this article. It says, a long-running complete dog of a stock, the ZNOG. It's usually to try to find at least some balance in an analysis of a stock or share. After all, there is at least some reason the company is in business, and there's always the unexpected that it can turn up. In my agreed, heavily weighted opinion, this is not true for Zion Oil and Gas. Zion used to be on the NASDAQ quoted as the N, and given the inability to maintain the minimum of $1 share price, the listing was withdrawn. I wrote back about Zion in November, and at the time that it happened, why this doesn't matter to Zion aids in explaining why the company is simply not investable for us out there. It is possible to make a turn on the volatility in the stock. It does bounce around, so obviously if one is correctly positioned, then it's possible to make a profit. But that does not involve guessing which way the stock price is going to bounce, for there's not really anything within the company that drives, as in any fundamental operational reason, those prices change. The previous view on Zion, as he said nearly 2 years ago, I get the impression, and of course this is going over the top with the rhetoric, that if they drilled through a gas station tank, they'd still miss the hydrocarbons. That was clearly unkind and possibly even a hyperbole, but my view hasn't changed. It's also true that the fund manager, whose opinion I greatly value, John Hempton, has been making such the same noises for 13 years now. This is about the congregation financing Zion, not about finding oil. I will refrain from, again, making a case for naked shorting because I can't see any real social benefit in aggressive hedge fund managers sharing when Hal Lindsey fleeces his flock. We can keep the losses in the fundamentalist family without any major social detriment. And on this, I pity the SEC. If the promoters hold the belief in oil in Israel as true religious belief, it will be very hard for the SEC to go after them. Even if this is as transparent as a scam as the Mother Jones thinks, it will be hard to prove. Did the Founding Fathers mean to constitutionally protect stock fraud? This notice to update by pointing to details which underline exactly the view. In the numbers, we can look at the ongoing numbers from Zion here, and there's nothing in them to change that view. They've not found oil, and they've continued to spin to try and find it. They fund this by selling more stock, and that really does seem to be the business function of the company. I find this little detail interesting. As of December 31st, 2021, we have 24 employees and contractors, of whom all but 2 are the full-time basis. Including in this numbers are certain contractors who provide services to Zion on an ongoing basis. Of the 24 total headcount, 17 work out of Dallas office and 7 work out of the Israel office. That just doesn't sound like a company that is all outweighted to go find oil, really. Seems like an awful lot of work in being done in the U.S. where the drilling rig ain't. We estimate that when we are not actively drilling a well, our monthly expenditure is approximately $600,000 per month. That's an awful lot of overhead to be carried for an exploration company, almost as if the carrying of the overhead is the point, it's not the exploration. Obviously, that's not all wages, but seriously, sure, there's flights to be taken, offices, computing, and so on, but $25,000 per employee per month for what is essentially essentially head office for an exploration company, we might think there's less than efficient allocation of resources there. The NASDAQ quote, sure, exploration companies need capital. We all know that. So there's a continual issuance of stock, new stock, until something that can be monetized is found. We all know that too. But that's why a NASDAQ quotation is something to keep. Being on the more liquid market makes raising that outside capital easier. That is a function of this end of stock market after all, raising capital for capital-hungry companies. So why did Zion, which desperately needs capital, allow the NASDAQ quote to lapse? It would have been fairly easier to achieve the requirements. All that would need to be done is a reverse stock split to get that price back above $1 in the minimum offer price. A 1 for 5 would have been both easy to achieve that goal. Perhaps a 1 for 10 would have been better. So why not? Because Zion is issuing new stock in order to fund itself, but it's not going to do it through the market. However, it still needs perhaps a desire is better, a market quote, so OTC is good enough. That's the little point is here. Currently, we are sustaining a reliant and proceeds of sales of our common stock under the dividend reinvestment and stock purchases plan. They bring in new investors or more from extent by issuing stock directly, not through the market. For the years ending December 31st, 2021 and 2020, we raised approximately $26 million and $28 million respectively under the plan. Of the amounts raised, approximately 85% of the amounts raised in 2020 were attributed to one participant, and 67% of those amounts raised in 2021 were of two participants. The cessation of funding from these participants may result in adverse consequences to our business, such as a delay in testing efforts until we locate alternate sources of funding. Being able to sell stock to such investors is made much easier by having a market quotation. For such a stock purchase plan, it is easier to run when the new stock is issued at the market, so that's what's done in my view. Some minimal quotation is maintained in order to be able to issue the stock in the market to those who fundamentally view of the company. There's a biblical evidence of oil in Israel. It would be good for Israel to have oil, therefore there's a religious duty to spend to find that oil in Israel. The really big question on that is not whether the investors believe that, but whether management really does believe that. For us as outside investors, there's also this. In the future, we anticipate issuing additional securities in connection with capital raising efforts, including shares of our own common stock or securities convertible into exchangeable or common stock, resulting in the dilution of the ownership interest of our stockholders. We are authorized under our amendment and restated certificate of incorporation to issue 800 million new shares of common stock as of March 15th, 2022. There were approximately 434 million shares of our common stock issued and outstanding. They're just over halfway through their already authorized dilution of the current stockholders through the stock purchase plan. That's really not a good sign for the stock price now, is it? And it says the case against my thesis. Maybe there really is oil in that area of Israel, and maybe Zion will find it. That is the case against my opinion. How much anyone wants to bet on that is entirely up to them, of course. And it finally gets down to his opinion. There's a taste here. To put it no more strongly than that, the Zion Oil and Gas Company is a company run not to find oil, but to pay those looking for oil. The funding to do so comes from the religiously inclined who are undertaking the funding for religious reasons. That makes it, for us non-religiously motivated investors out there, a dangerous proposition. More than that, the company has been working for 2 decades now, found nothing, is diluting the extent stockholder base at a rapid rate, and apparently intends to continue doing so. There's also variances in the Zion stock price, and those can be traded, and assuming that it's possibly to get timings right and directions, money can be made. But that's what is being traded. The volatility of belief in the mission, not the underlying fundamentals of the business. And it says the investor view. Speculate away on volatility by all means, but the idea that there's going to be a basic change in prospects here seems extremely remote. On the basis that there's not really the point of the company in the first place. That's not the point of the company in the first place. As I said 2 years back, as others have been saying for over a decade, Zion Oil and Gas is a dog, yes, even as an OTC stock. Wow, what a punk. So this guy comes on and yeah, he's definitely bearish on Zion Oil and Gas, no doubt. So he has some points that I do agree with, and then there's some points obviously I don't agree with. His point about there's money to be made on volatility, yeah, absolutely. And you can best believe that when they come out with an announcement of, hey, this is what we got, these are our plans, blah, 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 then the volatility is going to kick in, and, you know, no doubt you're going to make, you know, you have the potential to make a lot of money, right? So I do agree on that. As far as, you know, them not finding anything, they did find something. If they wouldn't have found anything, they wouldn't have, you know, people out there to test it. Okay, so there's no way that they bring people out to test the well if they found nothing. So he's wrong on that aspect, but I get kind of what he's saying is there's no, you know, no viable well or anything as of yet, but that's hopefully the longer term goal is to develop, you know, the big, you know, oil field and things like that. And if you think about it, I mean, yeah, it's kind of been a dog. I mean, it got all the way down from $1.74 to now 16 cents. So yeah, that kind of stinks. But yes, they are an exploration company. They are out there looking for oil, and yes, they do fund all their operations from investors. So at this point, yeah, they have zero revenue, which absolutely, it kind of does stink at the time, and it's a very risky play. But it is what it is at this point, right? So yeah, he's definitely bearish on this stock. I really hope that we can get a comeback and make him eat his words here and prove him wrong. So we'll kind of see what happens. So if we take a look at this guy, he is Tim Worstall, is a wholesaler of rare earth metals and one of the global experts in the metal scandium. He's also a fellow at the Adam Smith Institute in London and a writer for a number of media outlets. Okay, so if you look down here, this is obviously probably his second article on ZNOG, and let me see if he's ever done anything other than, yeah, this is actually, looks like it only has one on here, but I'm not sure what happened to the other one. But he did have one apparently that he talked about. He talked about ZNOG and called it a dog. I remember seeing that one actually, of him talking about that. So he's put out 759 articles, and you know, I haven't read any of them except for this one, just because it's about Zion Oil and Gas. So one thing, you know, like I said, he's not wrong on some things here about how they do get their funding. Yeah, he's stating the obvious. There is money to be made on volatility. Absolutely there is, especially if you time it right. And he says that the actual business is simply not going to be viable. Well, that's remained to be seen. And like he said, it's in his opinion, of course, he doesn't think that they're going to be able to basically get their crap together and start producing oil commercially like what their plans are. So up until this point, I mean, it is, like I said, it's an opinion, but he's not fully wrong in a lot of these things. However, we'll know shortly, hopefully, and hopefully it'll be the opposite of what he thinks, and we can prove this guy wrong, and then he can come back and maybe make a video on how he was wrong. So anyway, guys, I'm not making this video to scare anybody, not making this video to be negative, just making the video because it was out on ZNOG and I cover the stock. I still own the stock, heavily invested, and hopefully we get some good news over the next couple of weeks. So let me know your comments below. Other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.